Naomi had always been the kind of woman who believed in the sanctity of marriage. She grew up watching her parents love and support each other through thick and thin, and she carried that same belief into her own relationship with Jason. Their marriage was built on trust, communication, and shared dreams. She believed they were a team, and together they could face anything life threw their way. But that all changed one fateful evening when Naomi discovered that her husband had been seeing someone else, a much younger woman. The betrayal hit her like a freight train, knocking the wind out of her and leaving her stunned and heartbroken. It wasn't just the affair itself that hurt. It was the realization that Jason, the man she had built her life with, had been hiding something so significant from her for so long. Naomi found out about the affair in the worst way possible. She came home from a work trip to find Jason's phone buzzing nonstop. At first, she thought it was just a work-related call, but when she glanced at the screen, her stomach dropped. The name of the woman was right there, a name she didn't recognize, with a message that read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. I miss you." The moment Naomi saw those words, she knew. She couldn't unsee it. Her world crumbled in that instant. Jason wasn't home yet, but the house suddenly felt cold and empty. Naomi sat in their living room, unable to process the devastation. She had been loyal, supportive, and loving. And now, here she was, betrayed by the one person she thought would always have her back. The pain was unbearable, but she knew one thing. She needed to confront him. When Jason walked through the door hours later, he could immediately sense something was wrong. Naomi didn't have to say a word. The look in her eyes said it all. She didn't need to scream or yell. The silence between them was deafening. "I'm sorry, Naomi," Jason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to go this far. It was a mistake. I love you." Naomi's heart shattered even more. A mistake? He had been seeing her behind Naomi's back for months, and now he called it a mistake. She had no words. All the dreams they had shared, the vacations, the house, the future, all seemed meaningless now. She felt like a fool for trusting him. "I don't want your apology," Naomi finally said, her voice cold and steady. "I want you to leave." Jason's face dropped. "Naomi, please. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can work through it." Naomi shook her head. "No, Jason. You've already made your choice. You've already shown me who you are." That night, Naomi packed his bags and left them by the door. She had no desire to fight anymore, no desire to beg him to stay. She had given him everything, her love, her support, her loyalty, and in return, he had shattered it all for a woman who was younger and, in Naomi's mind, less deserving. As Jason left the house that night, Naomi stood at the door, watching him go, her heart heavy but resolute. She wasn't going to cry over him. She wasn't going to chase him. This was the end of the line. But little did Jason know, this was just the beginning of Naomi's journey. This wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was a story of revenge, of reclaiming her life, and of finding the strength she never knew she had. Naomi spent the first few weeks after Jason left in a state of numbness. The pain was unbearable, but it was also something she couldn't seem to shake off. She had always been the type to put others first, especially Jason. She had given up parts of herself, sacrificed her dreams and desires to build a life with him. And in return, he betrayed her. The anger inside her simmered, but she kept it under control, focusing on the reality of moving forward. It was during this time that Naomi started to realize something important. She had let go of her past. For years, she had been living in the shadow of someone else's decisions, someone else's actions. Now, she had the freedom to choose who she wanted to be, without the weight of Jason's betrayal on her shoulders. She wasn't just Naomi, the wife, anymore. She was Naomi, the woman who would build herself back up, stronger than before. But she wasn't just going to let Jason walk away without facing consequences. She had suffered through his lies and betrayal, and the last thing she wanted was to let him get away with it. She had to do something, and that's when the idea hit her. It was time to take back control. It was time to show him just how wrong he was to walk away from their marriage. Jason had always seen her as his equal. At least that's what he had told her. But now, Naomi knew she had something he didn't. the ability to rise from the ashes. He had thought leaving her for a younger woman would be the escape he needed, the life he could never have with Naomi. But Naomi was going to turn the tables. He would regret this decision. As the days went on, Naomi started thinking about her revenge, but not the petty kind. She wasn't going to beg for his attention or try to make him jealous with some rebound fling. She had bigger plans. Her revenge would come in the form of success, of taking what Jason had walked away from and turning it into something magnificent. Naomi realized that she had always held back from fully pursuing her dreams. She had always lived for Jason, for their family, for the life they were supposed to build. But now she would do it for herself. She would make something of herself, something that Jason would never see coming. And it wasn't going to be about getting back at him. It was going to be about proving to herself that she was worth more than he had ever believed. The idea came to her when she was browsing through old real estate listings one night. Jason had always been the one who dreamed big, talked about moving to a larger house, the mansion he had always wanted. But they had never gotten there. Naomi had always settled for less, for compromise. But now, with no one to answer to, with no one telling her it was impractical, she had the freedom to aim high. Naomi began her search for a property, not just any property, something that would blow Jason's mind. She wasn't just looking for a bigger house. She was looking for the house, the one that would make him regret ever walking away. A mansion, a symbol of everything she had built for herself, a statement of power, success, and independence. After months of searching, she found it. A $3 million mansion on a sprawling plot of land. It wasn't just beautiful. It was magnificent. The architecture was a perfect mix of modern luxury and classic elegance, with sweeping views, a pool, and a garden that could rival any royal estate. Naomi knew, without a doubt, that this was the place that would change everything. This was the place where she would prove that she was more than just Jason's wife. This was the place where she would rise. As she signed the papers and made the down payment, Naomi could already feel the anticipation building inside her. She wasn't doing this to show off, not to show Jason that she was better off without him. She was doing this to show herself that she could have it all. She had worked hard for this moment, and it was her time to shine. It was the day Naomi had been waiting for, the day she would step into her new life, one that she had built from the ground up. The deal had been finalized, the paperwork signed, and the movers were on their way. Her heart raced with excitement as she walked through the grand entrance of her new $3 million mansion. She had dreamt of something like this for years, but never thought it would be possible. Yet, here she was, standing in the very house that would serve as a symbol of everything she had overcome. The mansion was breathtaking, a true masterpiece. The marble floors shimmered in the sunlight, and the ceilings soared high above her, making everything feel both elegant and empowering. The grand staircase, with its intricate railing, the open-concept living spaces that flowed seamlessly from one to another. It was everything she had ever wanted, and more. But Naomi knew this wasn't just about the house. It wasn't about showing off or impressing others. It was about taking back control of her life, reclaiming her identity, and showing herself that she could achieve everything she had ever dreamed of, without relying on anyone else. Naomi had always been independent, but marriage had caused her to put her dreams on hold. She had sacrificed so much of herself for Jason and their life together, always pushing her goals and desires aside in favor of his ambitions. Now, it was her turn. She had worked hard, both in her career and in her personal growth, and this mansion was a testament to her perseverance and strength. As the movers unpacked boxes and set up her furniture, Naomi wandered through the rooms, envisioning how she would decorate and personalize every corner of this house. She could already see herself hosting intimate gatherings with friends, enjoying the peace and luxury of her new space, and feeling like the queen of her own castle. This was her time, the time for Naomi to build a life that was completely her own. While she was unpacking in the kitchen, Naomi's phone buzzed. It was an unexpected message from Jason. For the first time since he left, Naomi felt a mix of curiosity and indifference. She hadn't spoken to him in months, and part of her wondered what he wanted now. As she read the message, Her heart skipped a beat. It was simple, but loaded with regret. I've been thinking about everything. I've realized I made a huge mistake. I miss you. I want to talk. Can we meet? Naomi stared at the message for a long time, her emotions swirling. Part of her was tempted to respond, to hear him out, to see if there was still a chance for them. But another part of her, the part that had risen from the ashes of their broken marriage, was resolute. She wasn't the same woman anymore. She had moved on. With a deep breath, Naomi typed a response. I've moved on, Jason. I'm happy now. I don't need you anymore. She hit send without hesitation. For the first time in months, Naomi felt a sense of peace. She had finally cut the last emotional tie to Jason, and she wasn't going to let his mistakes drag her back into the past. Jason's message wasn't the only one that came through that day. Naomi's friends began reaching out to congratulate her on the new house, excited for her fresh start. But it wasn't just her friends who were congratulating her. Naomi had become somewhat of a local legend in her community, known not only for her beauty and grace, but for her resilience and determination to succeed. Word had spread fast about her $3 million mansion, and soon even her social media was flooded with messages of admiration and support. The days turned into weeks, and Naomi's new life was starting to take shape. She enrolled in an interior design course, something she had always wanted to pursue but had never had the time for. She began meeting with local entrepreneurs and business owners, building connections that would help her grow her own ventures. Her social media following exploded as more and more people tuned in to watch her transformation, not just of the house, but of herself. Naomi was becoming a beacon of inspiration, a symbol of what it meant to rise after everything had fallen apart. But while Naomi was busy building her empire, Jason couldn't stop thinking about her. The life he had walked away from, the woman he had once loved, was now living a life he could only dream of. And though he couldn't admit it yet, his regret was starting to eat away at him. It had been several months since Naomi had moved into her new mansion, and her life had blossomed into something she had never imagined possible. Every corner of the house felt like a reflection of her new self, confident, independent, and thriving. Naomi had rebuilt not just her home, but her spirit. The initial heartbreak from Jason's betrayal seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by the excitement of building her own future, step by step. But Jason couldn't shake the feeling of regret. It had been weeks since he reached out to Naomi, and she had made it clear that she had moved on. Still, he found himself obsessing over the messages, the life she was living, and the crushing realization that he had let something beautiful slip away. It wasn't just that Naomi had built a new life. It was the fact that she was thriving in ways he never expected. He had expected her to crumble, to beg him to come back. But instead, she had turned the tables completely. Naomi's transformation was nothing short of inspiring, and it hit Jason harder than he cared to admit. He kept hearing stories of Naomi's new success. Her name had been all over social media, and her accomplishments were impossible to ignore. From her stunning new mansion to her entrepreneurial ventures, Naomi was living the life Jason had always dreamed of, without him. And that was the part that ate at him the most. Jason had thought that walking away from her would be easy, that he'd be better off with someone younger, someone less complicated. But now, as he scrolled through Naomi's social media profiles, seeing her in the finest clothes, attending high-profile events, and surrounded by people who adored her, he realized how wrong he had been. Jason had always been the center of attention in their relationship. Naomi had always supported him, pushed him to achieve more, and helped him with his career. But now, Naomi was the one in the spotlight. And Jason, the man who had once thought of himself as the successful one, was feeling overshadowed. The jealousy crept in slowly at first, but it quickly consumed him. One evening, Jason found himself sitting at a bar, nursing a drink, his thoughts heavy with regret. He couldn't stop thinking about Naomi. The way she had handled their divorce with grace, the way she had turned her life around in record time. He didn't know how to get her back, and the more he thought about it, the more it seemed impossible. His mind wandered back to the messages he had sent her months ago, the ones apologizing and asking for a chance to talk. Naomi's response still echoed in his ears. "I've moved on, Jason. I'm happy now. I don't need you anymore." It hurt more than he had expected. He had always believed that Naomi would wait for him to come to his senses. But she hadn't. She had taken charge of her own life, made her own decisions, and was now flourishing. Jason realized, with a sinking heart, that he wasn't the man who held the power in this situation anymore. Naomi had reclaimed it all. But another part of her, the part that had risen from the ashes of their broken marriage, was resolute. She wasn't the same woman anymore. She had moved on. With a deep breath, Naomi typed a response. "I've moved on, Jason. I'm happy now. I don't need you anymore." She hit send without hesitation. For the first time in months, Naomi felt a sense of peace. She had finally cut the last emotional tie to Jason, and she wasn't going to let his mistakes drag her back into the past. Jason's message wasn't the only one that came through that day. Naomi's friends began reaching out to congratulate her on the new house, excited for her fresh start. But it wasn't just her friends who were congratulating her. Naomi had become somewhat of a local legend in her community, known not only for her beauty and grace, but for her resilience and determination to succeed. Word had spread fast about her $3 million mansion, and soon even her social media was flooded with messages of admiration and support. The days turned into weeks, and Naomi's new life was starting to take shape. She enrolled in an interior design course, something she had always wanted to pursue but had never had the time for. She began meeting with local entrepreneurs and business owners, building connections that would help her grow her own ventures. Her social media following exploded as more and more people tuned in to watch her transformation, not just of the house, but of herself. Naomi was becoming a beacon of inspiration, a symbol of what it meant to rise after everything had fallen apart. But while Naomi was busy building her empire, Jason couldn't stop thinking about her. The life he had walked away from, the woman he had once loved, was now living a life he could only dream of. And though he couldn't admit it yet, his regret was starting to eat away at him. It had been several months since Naomi had moved into her new mansion, and her life had blossomed into something she had never imagined possible. Every corner of the house felt like a reflection of her new self, confident, independent, and thriving. Naomi had rebuilt not just her home, but her spirit. The initial heartbreak from Jason's betrayal seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by the excitement of building her own future, step by step. But Jason couldn't shake the feeling of regret. It had been weeks since he reached out to Naomi, and she had made it clear that she had moved on. Still, he found himself obsessing over the messages, the life she was living, and the crushing realization that he had let something beautiful slip away. It wasn't just that Naomi had built a new life. It was the fact that she was thriving in ways he never expected. He had expected her to crumble, to beg him to come back. But instead, she had turned the tables completely. Naomi's transformation was nothing short of inspiring, and it hit Jason harder than he cared to admit. He kept hearing stories of Naomi's new success. Her name had been all over social media, and her accomplishments were impossible to ignore. From her stunning new mansion to her entrepreneurial ventures, Naomi was living the life Jason had always dreamed of, without him. And that was the part that ate at him the most. Jason had thought that walking away from her would be easy, that he'd be better off with someone younger, someone less complicated. But now, as he scrolled through Naomi's social media profiles, seeing her in the finest clothes, attending high-profile events, and surrounded by people who adored her, he realized how wrong he had been. Jason had always been the center of attention in their relationship. Naomi had always supported him, pushed him to achieve more, and helped him with his career. But now, Naomi was the one in the spotlight. And Jason, the man who had once thought of himself as the successful one, was feeling overshadowed. The jealousy crept in slowly at first, but it quickly consumed him. One evening, Jason found himself sitting at a bar, nursing a drink, his thoughts heavy with regret. He couldn't stop thinking about Naomi. The way she had handled their divorce with grace, the way she had turned her life around in record time. He didn't know how to get her back, and the more he thought about it, the more it seemed impossible. His mind wandered back to the messages he had sent her months ago, the ones apologizing and asking for a chance to talk. Naomi's response still echoed in his ears. "I've moved on, Jason. I'm happy now. I don't need you anymore." It hurt more than he had expected. He had always believed that Naomi would wait for him to come to his senses. But she hadn't. She had taken charge of her own life, made her own decisions, and was now flourishing. Jason realized, with a sinking heart, that he wasn't the man who held the power in this situation anymore. Naomi had reclaimed it all. "What we had is gone, and I've built a life I'm proud of. I've learned to trust myself again, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else take that away from me." Jason stood up, realizing there was nothing more he could say. The realization hit him hard. Naomi wasn't the same woman he had once known. She had moved on, not just from their marriage, but from the person he had been in her life. Before he could turn to leave, Naomi spoke one last time. "Jason, I wish you all the best. But don't ever think that what you did to me was okay. You don't get to hurt someone and expect them to just welcome you back with open arms." Jason nodded, the weight of her words settling in. There was no going back. Naomi had rebuilt herself into someone powerful, and he could never take that from her. As he left the mansion, he realized that he had lost something far greater than Naomi. He had lost his chance to be the person she deserved, and he would live with that regret for the rest of his life. After Jason left her mansion, Naomi stood by the door, watching him drive away. For a split second, she felt a pang of sadness, but it was quickly replaced with a sense of finality. This was it. Jason was gone from her life for good. There was no looking back. The air felt fresher, the space around her larger. Everything was lighter. For the first time in a long time, Naomi allowed herself to breathe freely without the weight of Jason's presence haunting her every move. She had spent so many years trying to fix a marriage that had been broken long before Jason had left her. And now, the only thing that mattered was her happiness, her success, and her future. Naomi went to the window and gazed out at the sprawling garden outside her new home. The sunset was casting golden hues over the horizon, and for the first time in months, she felt at peace. She had built this life from the ground up, on her own terms. There was no one to answer to, no one to disappoint. This was her moment. But Naomi wasn't the type of woman to rest on her laurels. She had big plans, and the best part was, she didn't have to justify them to anyone anymore. She enrolled in a business course to expand her skill set, something she had always wanted to do but had put on the back burner for years. She had always been a quick learner, but now, with the space to grow, she wanted to delve deeper into the world of business and entrepreneurship. She wasn't going to be limited by her past or by anyone else's expectations. Her social media presence exploded. She started sharing snippets of her journey, from the heartbreak to the triumphs, from the mansion to the moments of empowerment that followed. Women from all over the world reached out to her, thanking her for being an inspiration, for showing them that it was possible to rise after pain. Naomi hadn't realized just how many women were struggling with their own heartbreaks, their own betrayals, and how many were looking for a way out. She had become more than just an entrepreneur. She had become a symbol of hope. She had built a brand for herself that wasn't just about luxury or success. It was about strength and resilience. She began collaborating with other successful women in her network, hosting workshops and events where they shared their stories, their struggles, and their secrets to success. Naomi had become the mentor she once needed, and it felt incredible to give back to the women who had supported her along the way. But there was still one thing Naomi had yet to truly confront: her own forgiveness. She hadn't fully forgiven herself for allowing Jason to dictate her life for so long. She hadn't forgiven herself for staying in a relationship that was toxic for far too long. Naomi realized that she needed to do this, not for anyone else, but for herself. One evening, as she sat alone in her study, she picked up a journal and began writing down everything she felt: her anger, her disappointment, her sadness, and then finally, her forgiveness. "I forgive myself," she wrote, the words flowing freely onto the page. "I forgive myself for staying when I should have left. I forgive myself for believing in someone who didn't believe in me. I forgive myself for letting someone else's choices dictate my happiness. I am enough. I have always been enough. As she closed the journal and set it aside, Naomi felt an overwhelming sense of release. She had let go, not of Jason or of the past, but of the power it had over her. She had freed herself, once and for all. Naomi's journey had been long, and there were still many chapters to write. But she was no longer the woman who had been abandoned and betrayed. She was the woman who had risen, stronger and more powerful than she had ever imagined. Months passed, and Naomi's new life continued to flourish. The mansion, once a symbol of pain and betrayal, had become a place of growth, success, and empowerment. Naomi's social media following exploded, and she became a celebrated figure among women seeking to rebuild their lives after heartbreak. She wasn't just a survivor of betrayal. She was an example of how to thrive after a life-shattering experience. Her business ventures took off faster than she could have ever imagined. Naomi launched a high-end lifestyle brand, offering exclusive events and workshops designed to inspire women to break free from toxic relationships and build lives of their own. Her brand was all about self-empowerment, independence, and resilience. Naomi knew that if she could transform her own life, so could others. She believed in the power of community, and that belief fueled her every decision. But the success wasn't just financial. Naomi had found true happiness. She had learned how to balance her career, her passions, and her personal life. For the first time in years, she wasn't living for anyone else. She was living for herself. The feeling of independence, of being in control of her own destiny, was intoxicating. And then came the event that would change everything. Naomi was invited to speak at a prestigious women's conference in New York. It was a huge honor, one of the biggest moments of her career so far. She was going to stand on stage in front of thousands of successful, powerful women and share her story of overcoming betrayal, building a life of success, and discovering her true potential. Naomi was nervous at first. The thought of speaking in front of such an influential crowd made her stomach flutter. But she quickly reminded herself that she had already done the hardest part. She had overcome the darkest chapter of her life. This was just another step forward, another chance to show the world who she really was. The day of the event, Naomi arrived early to get familiar with the stage. As she prepared, she couldn't help but think back to where she had started. She had once been that woman, standing on the edge of despair, wondering how she would ever get through the pain of Jason's betrayal. But now, she was ready to speak to thousands of women who needed to hear her message of resilience and strength. The conference hall quickly filled with eager faces. Naomi stood backstage, her heart pounding in anticipation. As she stepped onto the stage, the crowd's energy hit her like a wave. She could feel their excitement, their hunger for inspiration. Naomi took a deep breath and began to speak. Ladies, today I'm here to tell you that no matter what you've been through, no matter what life has thrown your way, you can rise. I know, because I've been where you are. I've been betrayed, I've been broken, and I've had to rebuild my life from scratch. But I'm standing here today because I decided to make one choice. I chose me. The audience was captivated. Naomi's words resonated deeply with everyone in the room. She shared her journey, the pain of betrayal, and the empowering process of letting go. She talked about the mansion, the business, and the freedom she had found. But above all, she spoke about self-love and how, through self-empowerment, she had learned to forgive herself and build the life she deserved. By the time Naomi finished her speech, the entire room was on its feet, applauding. She had done it. She had turned her pain into power, and she had inspired countless women in the process. She wasn't just telling her story, she was giving others the courage to write their own. As Naomi walked off the stage, tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. She had come so far, and now she was a symbol of hope, strength, and transformation for so many others. Back in her hotel room, Naomi received a call. It was from her agent. "You won't believe this," her agent said, voice filled with excitement. "We've just received a proposal for a major book deal. A publishing company wants to work with you to turn your story into a bestseller." This is your chance to reach even more people." Naomi smiled, overwhelmed by the news. It wasn't just a book deal. It was the culmination of everything she had worked for. Her story, her journey, her success. They were about to touch the lives of millions. Naomi's life seemed to be unfolding like a dream. Her success had surpassed even her own expectations. The book deal was the cherry on top, a chance to take her story global, to inspire thousands, perhaps even millions, of women who had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and adversity. But little did Naomi know, her newfound fame was about to hit closer to home than she expected. As Naomi sat down to write the first chapter of her book, she couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just a story about her marriage or her heartbreak. It was a story of resilience, of self-discovery, and of empowerment. She had taken everything that had once shattered her and turned it into something meaningful. Her book would inspire women who were stuck, who were afraid to take that first step toward a better life. But as she poured her heart into the pages, there was one part of her story that she couldn't escape: Jason. She had lived through the betrayal, the pain, and the healing, but every time she wrote about the dark days of her marriage, it was hard to ignore the fact that Jason had once been such an integral part of her life. Meanwhile, Jason, back in his apartment, was watching Naomi's success unfold from afar. The more he saw of Naomi's new life, the more he realized just how badly he had messed up. It wasn't just that she had rebuilt herself. It was that she had done it without him. Jason had always believed that Naomi couldn't survive without him, that she was too dependent on him, too weak to thrive on her own. He had been wrong. When Jason first heard about Naomi's book deal, his heart sank. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Naomi had become a success story, a symbol of what could happen when a woman decided to take control of her life. She wasn't the woman he had left behind. She was better, stronger, smarter, and more confident than he had ever imagined. The regret gnawed at him, but he couldn't bring himself to reach out to her. He had burned that bridge when he walked away, and no amount of regret could change that. Yet Jason found himself watching Naomi's every move. He saw her speaking at conferences, reading excerpts from her book, and posting updates about her growing business. Each time he saw her, it was a reminder of what he had lost. Jason's jealousy grew as Naomi's brand expanded. Her story was being shared across the media, and women from all over the world were applauding her for the courage and strength she had shown. He had always been the one in the spotlight during their marriage. But now it was Naomi who was shining brighter than ever. And the worst part? He was the one who had pushed her away. One evening, as Jason scrolled through social media, he saw a post from Naomi. It was a picture of her standing in front of a packed auditorium, giving a powerful speech to a room full of women. She looked radiant, confident, and completely in control. The caption read, "Sometimes the greatest revenge is not fighting back, but living your life so fully that the past can't touch you anymore." Jason's stomach twisted as he read the words. Naomi had taken the pain he had caused her and turned it into something magnificent. She had become everything he could have ever wanted, and now she was untouchable. It was in that moment that Jason realized the full extent of his mistake. He had lost Naomi, and it wasn't just because of the affair. It was because he had never truly appreciated who she was. He had taken her for granted, thinking she would always be there, always waiting for him to come back. But Naomi had proved him wrong. She had moved on, not just from the relationship, but from the person he had been in her life. Jason had lost his chance with Naomi. And as much as he tried to justify his actions, there was no escaping the truth. Naomi had become a woman who didn't need him. She was thriving without him. The realization hit Jason like a ton of bricks. He was the one who had been left behind, and now Naomi was living the life he had once dreamed of for them. She had achieved everything he had promised her, but never delivered, and she had done it without him. Jason sat alone in his apartment, staring at the screen in front of him. His life had become a monotony of missed opportunities and mounting regrets. Naomi's success, her new life, and the growing admiration of women all over the world only amplified the emptiness he felt inside. She was no longer the woman he had left behind, vulnerable and shattered. No, she had become something he never expected, a force to be reckoned with. Jason knew he had one last chance to make things right, to apologize, and to somehow fix the irreparable damage he had done. His thoughts were conflicted. Part of him wanted to let it go, to accept that Naomi was better off without him. But another part of him, the part that was used to getting what he wanted, couldn't let go of the idea of winning her back. It was an early morning when Jason finally made up his mind. He had spent hours drafting and deleting messages, unsure of how to approach her. He thought about the pain he had caused her, and how his affair had not only destroyed their marriage, but left her to pick up the pieces of her life alone. Naomi had proven that she could succeed without him, and now Jason needed to acknowledge that. But what if it wasn't too late? What if he could find a way to show her that he had changed? What if he could beg for her forgiveness and somehow restore what they had lost? His fingers hovered over his phone screen, and with a deep breath, Jason typed the message. Naomi, I know I've hurt you in ways I can't undo, and I'm sorry. I've made mistakes, but I've also grown. I've realized that I took you for granted, and I will live with that regret for the rest of my life. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. You were everything to me, and I can't help but feel the loss every single day. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. Jason hit send before he could second-guess himself. As he sat there, staring at the screen, his heart raced. He knew Naomi had moved on, but maybe, just maybe, this message would show her that he had changed. Maybe it would open a door he thought was forever closed. But as the minutes passed, he felt an overwhelming sense of dread. He had never truly understood the weight of his actions until now. Naomi had built a life for herself, one that didn't include him. The fact that she had found happiness, success, and peace without him made Jason's apology feel small and insignificant. It wasn't long before Naomi's response came through. He opened the message, heart pounding, and read the words that would forever change everything. Jason, I've read your message, and I've thought about it. But here's the thing. I don't need your apology. I've learned to forgive myself. I've learned to forgive you too. I don't need to relive the past. I'm no longer the woman who needed you to feel whole. I've moved on, and I will never go back. My life is my own, and I've found peace without you. Jason stared at the message, disbelief flooding his mind. Naomi's words hit him hard, sharper than any rejection he had ever felt. She had moved on, completely. It wasn't that she hated him. It was that she had outgrown him. Naomi had taken the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the pain, and turned them into something beautiful. She had rebuilt herself, not just as a woman, but as an empowered force in her own right. And Jason? He was left in the dust, holding on to a version of their relationship that no longer existed. For the first time, Jason understood that his chances were gone, not because Naomi couldn't forgive him, but because she no longer needed him. As he read Naomi's final words, a deep realization settled over him. He had tried to control her life, manipulate her, and push her aside for someone else. And now, he was the one left, with nothing. Weeks passed, and Naomi's life only continued to improve. Her book had become a bestseller, and her personal brand was growing stronger every day. Naomi had turned her pain into a powerful platform, and her journey had inspired women around the world. She was invited to speaking events, hosted exclusive retreats, and had even begun receiving offers to collaborate with top brands. Her mansion, once a symbol of heartbreak, now stood as a beacon of strength, independence, and success. Naomi spent her days working on her business ventures, attending social gatherings with influential figures, and spending quality time with her friends and family. She had completely embraced her new life, and for the first time in a long time, she was truly content. Naomi had found peace in the most unexpected way. Her success was no longer about getting back at Jason or proving a point to him. It was about proving to herself that she could achieve everything on her own. She didn't need him to validate her worth. She had validated herself. Jason, on the other hand, was living in the shadows of regret. Every day, he scrolled through Naomi's social media posts, each one a reminder of what he had lost. The woman he had left behind had become a role model, a success story, while he was stuck in a cycle of self-pity and missed opportunities. It wasn't just Naomi's success that ate at him. It was the fact that she was thriving without him, and doing it better than she ever had when they were together. Jason had always taken credit for their achievements in the past, but now Naomi was doing it all on her own. The emptiness he felt grew each time he saw her reach a new milestone. He couldn't escape the truth. Naomi was better off without him. He was no longer the man who could offer her the life she deserved. And with every passing day, that truth became harder to ignore. Jason's frustration reached a boiling point when he received an invitation to one of Naomi's upcoming retreats. The event was a high-profile affair, and Naomi had invited her closest supporters to be part of an exclusive experience. Jason was curious. He had always known that Naomi had a lot to offer the world, but seeing her do it without him, watching her rise to unimaginable heights, it stung. In a moment of weakness, Jason decided to attend. He knew it would be painful to see Naomi surrounded by people who admired her, but he thought maybe it would give him a chance to speak to her again, to somehow convince her that he had changed. But deep down, Jason knew that this was more about his own need for validation than any real desire to make amends with Naomi. As he arrived at the retreat, Jason was struck by the aura of confidence that surrounded Naomi. She was a leader now, not just in business, but in every aspect of her life. She moved through the crowd with ease, greeting her guests, making connections, and delivering empowering speeches. Naomi had become a beacon of inspiration, and it was clear to everyone in the room that she had earned her place at the top. Jason felt out of place. He was a shadow in Naomi's world, trying to make himself visible but failing miserably. Naomi, on the other hand, was the center of attention, the one everyone wanted to be around. It hit him like a ton of bricks. Naomi had outgrown him. She had gone from being his wife to being a powerhouse in her own right. And Jason? He was just a man who had once taken her for granted. At one point during the retreat, Jason found himself in a quiet corner, watching Naomi from a distance. Her laughter filled the air, and she was talking passionately to a group of women who were hanging on her every word. Jason's heart sank as he realized that the life he had once imagined with Naomi was no longer possible. She had built a life that was better than anything he could have offered her. Naomi caught his eye for a brief moment, and Jason's heart skipped a beat. For the first time in a long time, their eyes met. But this time, Naomi didn't look at him with longing or pain. She looked at him with indifference. There was no anger, no bitterness, just the calm realization that their past was behind her. Jason knew then that he had truly lost her. And in that moment, he finally understood the price of his actions. Naomi had not only rebuilt her life, she had transformed into someone who didn't need him, and that was the most powerful thing he could have ever witnessed. Jason left the retreat early that day. As he walked away, he realized that Naomi's success wasn't just about the mansion, the money, or the fame. It was about her freedom. She had freed herself from the chains of her past and had become the person she was always meant to be: powerful, independent, and unstoppable. As Jason walked away from the retreat, his heart heavy with regret, he couldn't help but replay the events of the past in his mind. Naomi had always been the strong, supportive woman by his side, lifting him up and encouraging his dreams. But he had taken her for granted. He had walked away from her when she needed him the most, and in doing so, he had broken something irreparably beautiful. But it wasn't just the loss of Naomi that stung. It was the realization that he had lost his chance to be a part of her life in any meaningful way. As he stood there, looking at Naomi from a distance, he understood something that he had refused to accept for so long. She didn't need him anymore. Naomi's transformation had not been about getting revenge on him or proving her worth to anyone. It was about taking back control of her life, reclaiming the power she had once handed over to him, and showing herself that she was capable of building a future on her own terms. She had built this empire, the mansion, the business, the community of women who looked up to her, all without him. And that was the most painful truth for Jason to swallow. He realized that Naomi's greatest victory wasn't just the success she had achieved or the luxury she now enjoyed. Her greatest victory was the freedom she had gained. Freedom from him, from their past, and from the emotional chains that had once held her captive. Naomi had risen above everything that had tried to break her, and now she stood tall, not as a victim of betrayal, but as a woman who had taken her life back. Jason sat down on a nearby bench, his head in his hands. The regret was overwhelming. He thought about all the times he had taken Naomi's love for granted, assuming she would always be there, always waiting for him. But now that person, the woman who had been so eager to forgive and forget, was no longer there. She had moved on, and she had found happiness and success without him. Meanwhile, Naomi continued to flourish. She had come to terms with the pain of her past, and instead of letting it define her, she had used it as fuel to propel herself forward. Her book was now being adapted into a motivational documentary, and she was frequently invited to speak at international conferences, sharing her story with women from all walks of life. She had become a global symbol of empowerment, resilience, and self-love. Her influence was spreading, and Naomi was exactly where she was meant to be. She wasn't just living her best life. She was changing the lives of others. The women who had once felt trapped, helpless, and betrayed now looked to Naomi for inspiration, and through her, they too were learning how to rise from their own struggles. As the days passed, Jason found himself stuck in the same routine, haunted by the memory of what he had lost. He reached out to mutual friends, trying to get updates on Naomi, hoping for a sign that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for them. But no one gave him the answers he wanted. Naomi was done with the past. She had moved forward, and Jason realized, too late, that he would never be part of her new life. One day, as Jason sat alone in his apartment, he scrolled through Naomi's social media once more. There was a post of her standing in front of a packed auditorium, her smile radiant as she addressed a crowd of women. The caption read, "The power to change your life is in your hands. The past does not define you. The only person who can take your power is the one you allow." Jason couldn't stop staring at the image. It was a picture of strength, of someone who had faced the darkest moments and emerged victorious. Naomi wasn't just a woman who had built her life back. She was a woman who had transformed herself, and in doing so, had freed herself from the shackles of her past. Jason had once thought he was the one who had the power to shape Naomi's life, but now it was clear that she had always been the one with the power. She had found her peace, and Jason, left with nothing but his own mistakes, was forced to live with the consequences of his actions. Final call to action. Naomi's journey isn't just a story of betrayal and revenge, it's a story of self-discovery, strength, and empowerment. She took back what was rightfully hers, her life, her happiness, and her future. If you've been through betrayal or heartbreak, remember, you have the power to turn your pain into something beautiful. Don't let the past define your future. Take back your life, just like Naomi did. If you've ever been through a similar struggle or found your own strength after heartbreak, comment below and share your story. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of resilience and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video that might change your life.